Today on the Time Traveling Chef, we're going back to ancient Rome, where Apicius has a sauce for ostrich. Let's get cooking. First, I'm going to start off by just cubing up the ostrich steaks, and then I'll just set those aside so I can begin working on the sauce. Since ostriches are not native to Europe, their presence in Rome signifies the wide network of trade and exotic animal procurement in the Republic and empires past. Imports of ostriches most likely began between the 1st century BC to 1st century AD, coming from regions of Africa, possibly as far as Ethiopia. There are images throughout Rome depicting the trade of ostriches like the one shown here. Ostriches were used in the Colosseum for entertainment purposes. The Venationes were a type of public spectacle where, in Roman amphitheaters, exotic animals such as ostriches were hunted and killed by gladiators or trained animal hunters. Ostrich feathers were even used to decorate armor and even for high fashion. Oh, and ostriches burying their heads in the sand? It's a myth. Doesn't happen. But the myth began from one line written by none other than the great study of all things, Gaius Plinius Secundus, or Pliny the Elder. In chapter 1 of Book 10, Pliny describes the ostrich and writes, "When they have thrust their head and neck into a bush, that the whole of their body is concealed." However, ostriches do stick their head down to consume sand and gravel, to aid in the digestion of food, and this sight could have led to confusion. Now let's get closer to our recipe, which possibly was served to this controversially eccentric emperor, Elagabalus. Elagabalus, also known as Heliogabalus, ruled between 218 and 222. He was wildly unpopular and excessive in every manner. Known for throwing extravagant feasts, ostrich was on the menu. One such feast was reported to have over 600 ostrich brains served. At some dinners, he would have his guests create a sauce that he would then taste and judge. In the Historia Augusta, the life of Elagabalus, it said he would propose that they should invent new sauces for giving flavors to the food, and he would offer a very large prize for the man whose invention should please him, even presenting him with a silk garment. So, I wonder if this sauce was worthy of such a prize. So let's look at this recipe, a sauce for boiled ostrich. Take pepper, mint, grilled cumin, celery seed, dates, honey, vinegar, passum, liquamen, and a little oil, and bring to the boil in a saucepan. Thicken with corn flour and pour this sauce over the pieces of ostrich in the serving dish and sprinkle with pepper. So, the recipe does call for grilled cumin. I'm taking it as toasted cumin seeds, so I'm just gonna add some, toast them up for maybe a minute or two. For the dry ingredients, it's gonna be pepper, mint, the toasted cumin, and celery seed. So I'm just gonna throw those into a mortar and mix them all together. Starting off with the peppercorns because they just always bounce all over the place. Throw in some of the cumin. Not too much because it is very strong. Some of the mint. Again, it just said mint, and with Apicius, it's hard to tell if it's fresh mint or dried mint, like many of the herbs. So, with this, I just think it's gonna be dried mint. And the celery seed. Now, how much? Well, that's never really said. So this is eyeballing it. It's kind of what feels right. I'm trying to put my mind into an ancient Roman there. We have dates. So I'm gonna chop up some of these dates. Again, don't know how fine they need to be chopped up. I think that not too fine. I think kind of nice to have that texture, a little bit of bite of sweetness in there. All right, so these are going to go into our pot. The Passum, the sweet wine we're going to add in. The closest thing in modern times is supposedly a wine called Passito di Pantelleria, which is a Sicilian sweet wine. I could not find that. Googling around, the closest thing would be a Sauterne. So that's what we're going to add in. Again, don't know how much I'm adding, but that feels right. Next, a strong vinegar. I'm going to go with a white wine vinegar here. It's going to be nice and acidic. And the liquamen, which the difference between liquamen and garum, I'm not really sure. I think I've read that liquamen is made from the whole fish, whereas the garum is just fermented from the innards, from the guts of the fish. But instead of making my own garum, I have fish sauce. We're gonna add in a few dashes of that. It is pretty strong, pretty salty. So we're gonna use it sparingly. And honey, just for a little bit more sweetness. And let's add in the dry bits. All right, let's whisk it together. And I did forget just a touch of oil. Alright. Now what we're gonna do is cook the ostrich. So I just have a pan very lightly covered in olive oil and throw the ostrich in. The ostrich is done. We're gonna let that rest for a minute. So the sauce is reducing really nicely, and the dates have actually kind of dissolved into the sauce. They're definitely still there, almost like caramelized onions in there, but it's definitely a lot less than there were, and the sauce is now a really nice, like marsala brown color. Now the recipe does say to thicken the sauce with corn flour, so that's what I'm gonna do. Corn flour is something I've never used before. Always cornmeal or corn starch. And supposedly this is kind of in between. So the corn starch is kind of just the endosperm, it's just that starchiness, hence the name. And the corn meal is everything, but just not as finely ground as corn flour. And that is thickening this up really quickly. I think I'm going to give one more scoop. I want to be careful as to not just make noodles in here. There we go. That became a nice sauce pretty quickly. Now for the last part of this ostrich ragu is to pour the sauce over top the ostrich. I think that's plenty. All right. Oh, and can't forget just a little sprinkle of pepper. Let's give it a try. It's nice when you turn the burners off. Okay, so we are back to recipes that I'm not excited to try. Yeah, I tried the ostrich. It's pretty good. This sauce is, it just looks horrifying. It doesn't smell terrible, but it looks pretty bad. Let's dig in. It's Romany. It definitely tastes like Rome. It's just, they're very strong flavors. It's actually not that bad. It's way sweeter than I thought it would be, which makes sense with the honey and the dates. But yeah, that little punch of vinegar. It's strange. It's actually not bad. It's just, I mean, it's not good at all, but it's not revolting. It's growing on me. I mean, I'll never make it again, but I could probably finish this bowl. I want to keep going back for more. And I'm even dipping into the sauce. This is a 5.5 out of 10. Yeah, 5.5.